So welcome to those of you who are signed on here already. You're here obviously for our latest Alberta SCILS webinar. Today's topic is pressure injury prevention and the impact of nutrition for people living with spinal cord injury. And for those of you that have been here before, this will be review, but Alberta SCILS is a monthly webinar series supported by Praxis Spinal Cord Institute and led by health providers from Alberta Health Services and Spinal Cord Injury Alberta, including people with lived experience. The webinar is co-designed by lived experience experts and clinical experts so that both perspectives are shared during Alberta SCILS. This webinar is designed for people living with spinal cord injury, their family members, and service providers involved in their lives. We anticipate Alberta SCILS will improve audiences' knowledge and empowerment through creating a sense of community, changing perceptions on disability, and improving social connectedness. So today's webinar, we are fortunate to have our two professional experts in this area, Dr. Eric Bly and Melissa Pop, our registered dietitian. Dr. Bly is a family physician by training who became involved in chronic wound care early in his career. He completed the International Interprofessional Wound Care course in New York in 2014 and has been a part of the Lethbridge Wound Clinic since 2013. Dr. Bly enjoys reading and exploring the outdoors. Following him, we will have Melissa. Melissa Pop has been a registered dietitian for the past 10 years. She has worked in a variety of different areas throughout Alberta, including continuing care, supportive living, and intensive care, medical and surgical units. She provides wound healing nutrition education to multiple healthcare providers working in community care. In Melissa's free time, when she is not working, that is, she and her boyfriend enjoy cooking unique foods, which I guess is fitting given her background, gardening, as well as adventures in the mountains and spending time with their 3 cats. So thanks to both of them for joining us. And then once they give their presentations, we're also very fortunate to have our lived experience presenter, Darren Gross from Lethbridge. Darren's been part of spinal cord injury community since 1983, and he will be sharing some of his experiences today as they relate to pressure injuries and nutrition and the challenges with those things. So yeah, without further ado, we'll cover a few items and then we'll get started. So just to touch on the rehab advice line that we want you to be aware of, it's an Alberta-only service available by calling that toll-free number on your screen. It connects callers to allied health clinicians who can help them access services close by, addresses activities and exercises that help with physical concerns, strategies to manage day-to-day activities, so on and so forth. That service is available 7 days a week from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. So if you're not aware of the rehab advice line, it's a good resource to be aware of. Also to note, the information contained in these webinars, as well as related materials, is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Please contact your medical practitioners for more information to see what's right for you, and also so that you're aware the webinar is being recorded and will be made publicly accessible via our YouTube channel. A few more things. You'll all be muted during the presentation. And as you know, we'll have our 3 presenters to do their part, and then we'll allow some discussion, questions and answers for everybody at the end. Please feel free to activate your cameras at this point if you wish. If you want to participate in the conversation, you can either use the chat box or wave your hand. You can press and hold the space key to unmute yourself if you're called upon or if you have a question. And between Terry and myself, we'll be monitoring the chat box for your questions, comments, and feel free to let us know if you are having technical issues on your end or especially ours. At the end, we will have some poll questions, just 2 poll questions for you right around just before 1 o'clock. That'll appear on your screen that we would like you to complete if you can. And for those of you less familiar with Zoom, you can change your name and keep your video off during the webinar if you so choose. All right, with that said, we will get started. And Dr. Bly, sorry, did you want to control?
Yep, that would be great.
Just finding you in my list.
Okay, good to go. Okay, so I am Dr. Bly. I'm a family physician by training. I took the International Interprofessional Wound Care course in 2013-2014 in order to help Dr. Sommerfeld with the wound clinic. It's considered an outpatient clinic of the Chinook Regional Hospital, even though we are physically located in the Melcor Center, also known as the Bay Mall. I have no conflict of interest and no commercial interest to declare. So let's jump right in. What protects your skin? So this will just be a quick review of pressure injuries, since our main focus here today is nutrition. Our skin is made up of multiple layers. Those multiple layers help protect everything that's within the skin. Very important within those layers is a layer of fat, which is a very good padding. We all have a layer of fat in our skin. Muscle can also provide padding as well as other important functions. We have nerve receptors that are there to help us detect temperature, touch, also known as pressure, sharpness, and the nerve receptors also help regulate moisture by way of our sweat glands. The stretchiness or elasticity of our skin is protective. The blood flow through our skin helps with temperature regulation as well as healing, and the movement of skin because of our muscles and through lymph channels help redistribute pressure and fluid throughout our skin to avoid problems. So what happens to your skin after spinal cord injury? Loss of sensation, and that can include touch or pressure, sharpness, temperature. Often there's loss of muscle activity as those nerves can no longer activate those muscles. That can decrease some of the padding because your muscles do have some bulk to them, and when they lose their nerve supply, they actually get thinner. It affects how we can redistribute pressure, both by the lack of being able to sense pressure as well as the ability to move and redistribute pressure. Fluid redistribution, especially our veins, rely heavily on our muscles in order to get that fluid back towards the heart. And then when we lose the nervous regulation of our skin, we lose control over the moisture balance in our skin and sweat glands. In addition, as we age, our skin loses some of its stretchiness. It's not as elastic. It doesn't return to shape as quickly. The fat layer gets thinner, and our overall ability to heal slows down for various reasons. So prevention is going to change over time because our ability to heal changes over time. So you may reach a point where what you do for prevention that has always worked no longer works, and that again is due to changes over time in the way our skin heals. Things to watch out for: color changes to the skin, especially red or kind of dusky maroon, or bruising, calluses, blisters, excess wetness of the skin, sometimes called maceration, shearing of the skin. How do I know I have a pressure injury? So again, redness, dustiness. There's something called a suspected deep tissue injury, which here's an example of one on a heel. It can usually it's a dark red or maroon or this dusky colored spot that is non-blanchable, meaning when you push a finger on it and let go, it doesn't push the blood out. It doesn't create a white spot. Sometimes there may be a blood-filled blister over top. Sometimes the skin might be intact. Sometimes there might actually be an open sore. And we'll talk a little bit more about suspected deep tissue injuries because they're a little bit of a trickier thing. But the concern there is it may not appear to be, it may be hard to tell how bad that injury is right away, and it's something that has to be watched over time. So pressure injuries, obviously an open sore, an area of swelling, a blister, anything that's not going away, especially if it's somewhere over top of bone where your skin is a little thinner and you have less padding. What do I do if I get a pressure injury? Well, get arranged to get medical attention. It's not always an emergency, but if you have things like fevers, chills, it looks infected, meaning there's redness, swelling, pus, heat, pain. Now the pain might be away from the area of the injury because often the area that's injured has no sensation, and that's why it became injured in the first place. But sometimes you can feel pain further up the body from that, and that may be a sign of infection. Obviously, if it's pain that you haven't had before and there are other signs that look like infection, then assume that's infection. Exposed bone and exposed tendon, you need to get on right away because if they dry out, those tissues will die, and so those need to be treated urgently. Here is what exposed tendon looks like. It's kind of a silvery white color. It often has little parallel lines in it, and it moves with joint movement. So if you see exposed tendon, get help right away. Watch closely. So we talked about these suspected deep tissue injuries. They may be deep, but they may be superficial. They may just look like a bruise, and it may take up to 2 weeks sometimes for the damaged tissue that's deeper down to be exposed to the surface, so to become obvious. So if you think you have a pressure injury, it's probably best to assume that it is a pressure injury and treat it as such, and then keep a close eye on it to see if it opens up, starts to look infected, that sort of thing. Control moisture. We don't want things too wet or too dry. In most cases, though, it's usually harder for us to keep skin dry than it is to keep it moist enough. The exception would be when there's tendon or bone exposed, then you need to keep tendon and bone dry, but that would be more of a situation where you'd be seeking help anyway. Protecting the area, so sometimes we call that offloading or using padding to protect the area from more pressure, more damage. Keep it clean, dry. You can use a barrier cream to the surrounding skin if you're having problems with the skin being too moist, but you shouldn't be putting moisturizing creams or barrier creams or any creams or ointments in the wound itself. So take pressure off the area, avoid shear in the area. You might need extra padding, bolsters, changes in your sleeping or sitting position, adjustments to wheelchairs, that sort of thing, in order to take the pressure off that area that you suspect has an injury. Foam dressings are a good option. They're good at controlling moisture, and they're also padding. And so they're a good go-to if you have them. I can tell you the brand names of ones that we use in the wound clinic, and I'm not 100% sure which ones are available to most people, but we tend to use Methylex foam, something called a Methylex border, which is an all-in-one foam with a non-traumatic silicone edge. Iodine's a pretty safe bet generally, unless you're allergic to iodine. It comes in a liquid, usually called betadine, although it can be generic as well. There's also iodine paste. The iodine liquid is usually pretty cheap and easy to get at most drugstores. So it's probably a good idea to have a bottle of that on hand. And you would just paint it on the area, let it dry, put whatever covering on you're going to cover it with. Antibacterial, like antibiotic creams and ointments are not usually helpful. mostly because they add moisture when we're trying to keep things a little drier, and they don't penetrate deep enough to really deal with an infection if there is one. And there's the problems with bacterial resistance to those, whereas iodine is pretty non-specific, and it's a good antibacterial product that helps dry things out. Avoid occlusive, so non-breathable plasticky dressings. The exception there would be skin tears, and we'll talk about that later. Do we want to address questions right now, or are we waiting till the end? Wait till the end, okay. So special cases, blisters. If you do get a blister, as much as possible, try to leave them intact. That fluid and that skin over there is protective and does a better job of helping that area heal than any dressing that we have. Skin tears. If you get a skin tear, try and reposition the skin right away to cover the most area that you can. This is when an occlusive dressing is nice. One brand name would be Tegaderm. Foam dressings also work fine. Basically, you're just sticking that skin back down in place and protecting it from drying out. And usually skin tears generally heal a lot better than an actual pressure injury. If you notice there's a thick scab, just leave it, let it dry out. It's often protective. It might need to be removed, but you're better off leaving it and getting medical attention to find out if it should be taken off or not. And again, it's suspected deep tissue injury. Watch it closely, protect it. It can evolve over the course of even 2 weeks, I've seen, where it may look like a bruise right after it happens, and then a couple of weeks later, it may actually open up into a wound. And the original injury actually happened 2 weeks ago. So keep a close eye on those. Continue to watch for worsening of wounds, signs of infection, because that changes things. If you've got a doctor's appointment booked in a week, but suddenly it's draining pus and it's red and it's swollen, then don't wait. Get in to see somebody based on what's going on, and optimize your ability to heal, which leads us to nutrition.
Thanks, Dr. Bly. We'll now have Melissa Pop, our registered dietitian, present to us, kind of building on what Dr. Bly's talked about and the part that nutrition can play. Thanks, Melissa.
Good afternoon, everyone. Happy to be here today. Today, we're going to talk about the essential elements of nutrition and how important that they are in the wound healing prevention, but more so we're going to talk today about the treatment of pressure injuries. If you actually have seen a dietitian in the past, this is not a replacement for any of the nutrition recommendations that you have heard from the dietitian in the past. This is just basic information about the necessity of essential nutrients that are needed for wound healing. And also too, we're going to provide basic suggestions of how you can actually heal via food and fluids. Next. Food and fluids are the medicine to prevent and treat pressure injuries. They're very essential in the prevention and treatment of the pressure injury, and also it helps with the cascade effect during the wound healing process. When you're not eating enough and you have poor quality food selections, then your increased risk of pressure injuries and severity and the size of the wound and is actually increases. And also poor nutrition also delays the wound healing process and increases your risk of infections. Next. Nutrients that are essential for the wound healing process are calories or energy, protein, fluid, vitamin, minerals, and nutrients. Next. Energy from your food and fluids is essential fuel for your body. The fuel that you put into your body every day, if you don't have enough fuel in your body, that actually can cause a catabolic or breakdown process. So with wounds, our energy needs are a lot higher to actually provide, our energy needs are a lot higher during the wound healing process. And so when people don't have enough fuel from their food or fluids, it actually can cause a severity of the wounds and cause a catabolic or a breakdown process of your body more so. People, when they actually have wounds, they have a poor appetite, and also being in pain with the presence of wound can also lead to a lower energy or calorie intake. So the overall goal during the wound healing process is to actually maintain your weight. If not, if you're underweight with a wound, it's actually ideal for you to gain more weight, because the higher the energy needs with the wound healing process is a necessity in order to have enough nutrients and energy to go to that wound. Next. The total energy requirements for a wound would be 30 to 35 calories per kilogram. Patients with spinal cord injuries actually require specialized energy requirements overall. People with spinal cord injuries without a wound tend to have lower energy requirements compared to those without a spinal cord injury. However, the elements of having a spinal cord injury plus a pressure injury, we tend to have higher requirements overall. And so compared to people that don't have a spinal cord injury. So hence, people that have a spinal cord injury with a pressure injury, they tend to require 1.5 times the amount of energy throughout the day. So that would be 30 to 35 calories per kilogram. Other factors that actually increase your calorie needs with the wound healing process is if you have more wounds on board and you're on your body, and also if you're underweight and also losing weight means that you're actually not getting enough energy throughout the day. So that with a wound actually can cause an energy deficiency. If the wound is worsening and you also have an infection, that you actually would require higher energy needs on the higher than 35 calories per kilogram. So by meeting with a dietitian, if you are experiencing wound loss, or I'm sorry, you're experiencing weight loss, and also your wound is not healing up, it would actually be really important to meet with a dietitian, because they could actually tell you how to top up your energy needs and how much you actually need throughout the day. Next. The overall key message of increasing your energy throughout the day is to eat throughout the whole day and making sure that every mouthful counts. Here's the opportunity. Not everybody has that opportunity to keep your energy needs and actually having that advice typically from a dietitian. But with the energy needs being high with the wound healing process, it would be ideal to have 3 meals and 2 snacks throughout the day. If you're not eating well throughout the day, grace throughout the day and have smaller meals and smaller snacks. Getting anything into and making sure that every mouthful and also every mouthful and sipful counts, just because of the process that's happening with the wounds and the higher energy needs. Another thing too is people that I see with spinal cord injuries, they actually set an alarm to remind themselves if they're not able to eat. So they actually just set an alarm on their phone and it reminds them when they should actually be eating. And so once you start to eventually eat, your appetite will improve. Another suggestion is to actually have ready-made foods in your home. So something that's pre-made, so like frozen entrees, pizzas, meat pies, burger patties, stews, casseroles, soups, rotisserie chickens, adding fruits and vegetables to your meal as well, and yogurts or milk products would actually balance your meal out. You could top up your energy needs by replacing skim milk or water with whole milk or 2% milk. Next. Now, if you are overweight or obese and you have a pressure injury, weight loss efforts are actually delayed, because if you're losing weight, that means you actually could be breaking down and losing, and you're not getting enough energy for your body to actually heal up your wound. So weight maintenance is actually recommended for people that are overweight or obese with a pressure injury. Next. Protein is a very important part to maintain your skin integrity or meeting your strength of your skin. Protein's role is also immune function, transporting hormones, but it's also an important part of transporting vitamin, minerals, and oxygen throughout your body. If you don't have enough protein, your body will break down the muscle. And when you have a wound present, your muscles will break down quicker if you do not have enough energy and protein on board. So it's important to actually ensure that you actually spread your protein intake throughout the day rather than leaving it to supper, which is quite common for clients, is they leave all their protein needs and energy needs to supper. So the key for protein is to actually have 25 to 30 grams of protein per meal. That is ideal for wound healing. Next, Janae. Here's an example of, we commonly know what the sources of protein are. The key thing that I just wanted to go through here is some people like to have vegetarian options or vegan options. So that would be an example of like tofu and soy, nuts and seeds, beans, peas, lentils. These are all really good sources of protein. Another thing that I just wanted to say is for absorption of protein, meat and animal sources tend to absorb a little bit better. So if you actually do not eat, if you do not like to eat animal products or like dairy products, eggs, you could substitute it as very well with tofu or nuts and seeds or vegetarian options. And if you're having a hard time with the wound healing process, if you are vegetarian and vegan, you could also meet with a dietitian. Next. You could add more protein at meals and snacks by replacing regular yogurt with skyr or Greek yogurt. Typically, skyr and Greek yogurt has almost 2% or 2 times the amount of protein per serving. So that's a really good option. You can also add nuts, hemp seed hearts, flaxseed, wheat germ to cereals or also to yogurt is another option. Peanut butter is a good source of protein. You can add that onto a piece of toast or a piece of fruit, or even add it on top of yogurt. Chickpeas and cottage cheese are really high in source of protein. And so you can top that up on top of your salads, chili, or either pasta sauce. Soy protein, whey protein, or milk powder. This is a common question that I get from clients. And I just wanted to say is that protein powder can be used. However, there is people that can't tolerate protein powder very well. So protein powder, if you are thinking about using it, I would highly recommend, it's very expensive and it's not covered for people that are over the age of 65, and people that are under the age of 65, you do require special authorization to get coverage for protein powder. It is a very costly option. So I would recommend using food first. So in the next slide, I'm going to get Janae to switch, and I'm going to go through a couple of the food first options for protein. So comparing block cheese. So a lot of clients that I see, they love processed cheese like cheese slices. Those have little to no protein per slice. So block cheese is a higher source. Cottage cheese and ricotta cheese are actually a really high protein source per serving. Eggs are a really good high protein source as well too. Beef, pork, chicken, or either turkey is really good as well too. Beans, peas, lentils are really high in protein as well. Ground flaxseed is another option to top up protein. Another really good source of protein is actually grain products, which I didn't put on the slide. Grain products actually has a substantial amount of energy for your body. And so a good protein source that are higher in calories from the grain products would be like bread, quinoa, cooked cereals that say that they're added protein on top of them. Cold cereals are also a good source of protein. Granola bars that are labeled high protein as well too is all a really good source of energy and protein. Next. Fluids. Fluids is required to keep your skin hydrated inside and out. Dehydration makes the skin less elastic. It's more fragile as well too. And when you're dehydrated, increases the risk of skin breakdown. Dehydration also reduces the blood efficiency, meaning our blood has less nutrients and oxygen that can flow to the wounds, which are in high demand. To avoid dehydration, the minimum is to drink at least 6 cups of fluids per day, unless otherwise recommended by a healthcare professional. Sources of fluid would be water, milk, coffee, tea, fruit juice, vegetable juice, or soup. So pretty much anything that melts in your mouth is a fluid. A lot of clients, when they have a wound that is draining more, or they're on a wound vac, or they're either vomiting or have diarrhea, they actually require more fluids than 6 cups. So they would actually need to top up your energy needs if you are having a day or a couple of days where you are having higher fluid output. So the key thing is to spread the fluids throughout the day. Some of my clients with spinal cord injuries, they tend to leave fluid at the end of the day, and that can cause an increased output in the evening and urinary output, which can be bothersome for if they're wanting to sleep. So I'd highly recommend if you waking up, I highly recommend actually drinking your fluids earlier on in the day to optimize your intake and making sure that you meet your needs, and also it helps to make sure that you're getting a good night's sleep as well. Next. If you don't like drinking fluids, there's a couple of tips I provided here for you. Most common thing people tell our dietitians is they hate drinking water. So what can you do to flavor it? So a couple of suggestions would be adding like Mio drops or Crystal Light drops or any flavoring drops. Some people add fruit into it, fruit juice, drinking fluids also between meals, and also with your meals will optimize your intake. If you actually are having a really hard time eating a large amount at once, a lot of times people do have this when they have a wound, their appetite goes down and they're just interested in eating. So it's highly recommended to actually eat your food first and then drink your fluids afterwards. Oh, and also with spinal cord injuries is access. So of course you can have a water bottle in your book bag. I have a client that actually uses a Camelback and puts the Camelback on their back of their wheelchair. Another suggestion would be choosing high fluid fruits and vegetables. So if you like fruits and vegetables, there's a couple of options. Examples would be like melons, berries, tomatoes, cucumbers. Those are some of the options that would be a little bit higher fluid if you're having a hard time getting enough fluids in the day. Next. The key nutrients that for vitamins, minerals area would be vitamin A, vitamin C, zinc, and iron. It's highly recommended getting your vitamins and minerals from food first. We also have from our food other nutrients that are responsible for the wound healing process, which I could do a separate presentation on. But I just wanted to optimize and just tell you that food first rather than supplements is ideal. Vitamin A and vitamin C are found commonly in fruit, dark colored fruits and vegetables. So if you add that to your meals throughout the day and snacks with some protein and some extra energy, that would be a really good snack or meal addition. Some other ideas for getting more zinc would be, or finding other methods for zinc would be like eggs, fish, beans, peas, lentils, liver, any milk products. Iron is actually deficient in a lot of people that have spinal cord injuries and actually our general population. So iron deficiency is very, very common with our wound healing patients. Iron can actually be absorbed better when you have fruits and vegetables with it, or vitamin C. So our patients that have wound healing do require iron, vitamin C, like I'm just talking about. So if you take those and put those together at your meals, you'll actually absorb iron better. Next, Janae. Another area that we tend to address with our clients is if they're not eating enough throughout the day, they like to try some nutrition supplements. So this would be in the form of like milkshakes or ones like they would, or fruit juices or bars. So the key thing is that there's a lot of other things that you could try first though before going to the nutrition supplements. So for example, you can make a super milk by adding in skim milk powder, which is cheaper and it tastes better. You can add that into Homo milk or either cream as well. You can also use protein powder. Protein powder, you can add it into milk really nicely and adds better into like warmer beverages. But the area of nutrition supplements, we get a lot of questions about this. It actually it is covered for the under age of 65. But the thing is that you get a lot more nutrients from food first. And this is only, the nutrition supplements are only a method to actually optimize and supplement your intake that you're not getting throughout your day. So most patients that we actually would recommend nutrition supplements for would be poor appetite, weight loss, or limited intake of food. If you're having a hard time drinking solid foods, I would highly recommend seeing a dietitian first, or finding a method of how to see a dietitian, because we can actually address these issues of whether or not it would be appropriate to start nutrition supplementation. Next. So the key take-home messages, which we talked about today, are increasing your calories in any way, shape, or form to optimize for wound healing processes, a higher amount of needs that are needed throughout the day, increasing your protein and fluids, and also your vitamin minerals throughout your food. Spread your intake of food and fluids throughout the day. So having more meals and snacks throughout the day, and optimizing it by adding more nutrition in every mouthful and sipful. And also too is just food first approach, which we talked about, and referring yourself to a dietitian. There's access to dietitians across the province. And so you can click on to, I've sent and put links in the YouTube video. And also the next slide would say about how you could actually get access to additional nutrition information. So you could get more access to information from reliable nutrition resources via albertahealthservices.ca/nutrition. And also too is the Wound Canada sections in the Wound Canada section on nutrition and spinal cord injuries. It's very specialized nutrition, education, and resources that are there available for everybody with spinal cord injuries. And that is everything. Is there any questions?
We'll save the questions for after, Melissa.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you so much. And so with me here as well, do you want to go on camera?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, I'll just get close and personal here for a sec. With me as well to wrap things up with our formal presentation is Darren Gross to share a little bit about his story with his lived experience of pressure injuries and nutrition. So welcome, Darren, and I will get my mug out of this shot here.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks to Dr. Bly and Melissa's information. But here's the reality of what happens when you do not follow those rules and that type of living. My injury came when I was 18 years old. I'm a very small framed individual. I'm about 6 foot, but I had just finally reached about 150 pounds just before I got hurt. 6 months later, when I left the hospital, I was down to 120 pounds, and weight has always been a problem with me. Fat just sometimes doesn't want to connect to certain people, and it does not want, no matter what I eat, what I drink, it just doesn't want to help with me. And then, of course, once your spinal injury, all those nice things that Melissa says about what you can eat, what you shouldn't eat, I would love to follow her to the T and by the book, but it's impossible because of things with spinal injury as far as bowel routines and whatnot. It's not a lot of those things want to work well with my system, so I don't know how to implement them and put them into me to get them to help. So that has been a big problem in my weight loss. When I first got hurt, being small framed and muscular was a big advantage because weight versus strength helped me bounce around and out of my chair, climbing up into people's vehicles. You know, I'm a hunter. I hunt out tree stands. I do a lot of rafting on the river. I do a lot of the stuff by myself, and I've always enjoyed that. But over the years of just putting your body through that kind of abuse, it eventually takes a toll. And so for the first 20 years of my disability, everything went great. Even though I only ate twice a day, you know, I'm not saying drinking is a good thing whatsoever, but the couple of beers I drank with my friends and whatnot on the weekends, those extra calories was what was keeping me going. And I didn't realize until about 20 years later when I started having a lot of troubles with my shoulders and stuff. I quit drinking completely and quit competing in, you know, sports at a city, provincial, or even national level. I gave all that up at one time, and I immediately lost about 5 pounds. And for the last 20 years since then, I've been losing on average about 2 pounds a year, which isn't a big deal, but now I'm back down to like 125 pounds. And I am nothing but bone, as you can ask Dr. Bly or Jeannie who's seen me. There's just no fat, there's no muscle there, there's nothing to heal. So my first injuries that I started dealing with were at my ankles. Before I had problems with my rear end or my hips, was my ankles. I tried dealing with it by myself for the first 3 months when, you know, nutrition and none of that stuff had anything to do with it. It was just using lousy bandages and polysporin and whatnot, not knowing what to do right. It didn't take long for those ankles to blow right out and get worse. What I didn't realize what was happening though was my nutrition level had gone completely out the hoots. and fluids. I mean, it's such a big thing. And when you're spinal injury, you deal with a lot of infections. So you do a lot of drinking. But all my drinking was water. I don't drink coffee. I don't drink juices, orange juices. They go through me. I haven't touched milk for 36 years or vitamin C. So I have the efficiency of those things to deal with in my body. And that's why I'm having a lot of trouble with my healing, is because I didn't know how to get those, the proper nutrients into my system to keep me healthy. So once my ankles blew out, I came to the wound clinic. Of course, there's a lot better bandages than a Johnson & Johnson 2x3 nonstick bandage. So with the wound clinic with Dr. Bly giving me the proper bandaging, debriding, which I didn't understand what that was all about. And then once I sat down and talked to Melissa, she was trying to help me out with my weight, which I didn't give her enough information about my disability and what I could eat or what I couldn't eat and how it affected me, because it's not always the most conversation you want to have with people. So I didn't tell her about that. So Melissa gave me her plan, and it didn't work for me to put weight on because I couldn't follow it. But a lot of the foods, the fluid ideas, and certain amount of food, the foods that she gave to me and stuff, I started following that as best I could, and immediately noticed the healing difference with my ankles. And within 3 months, my ankles were completely healed with proper debriding, proper bandaging, and proper nutrition. But now me and Melissa still have a problem of trying to get me to be able to intake what she needs me to intake so that I can put the weight on, because from the waist down, I have nothing but bones now. So there is no fat, there is no muscle, there's nothing between the bones and the outside world to heal. And so, the only way that's ever going to heal, I won't be able to put muscle back on. It's not like I can start doing squats or whatnot. So the only way to heal that is going to be by increasing my nutrients, my fluids, my protein, my just calories. I need to double them. I need to triple them. I need to start taking some chances, I guess. Not that anybody wants, when you're spinal injury, Terry can adhere to this, last thing you want to have is bowel accidents. They're not a fun thing, and they're not a fun thing part of life. But gonna have to start taking some risks and chances and to take a lot of different foods to see if I can get my weight up, because I have no doubt without the extra weight, there's just so much that can happen. Your body can only do so much. Another mistake I was making that Melissa's taught me is I would eat and immediately lay down thinking, oh, that food's going to go to fat because I'm not wearing it out. But what happened is just lack of exercise. My muscles have completely gone. My skin has totally changed. And so all that is, if you heard her and what Dr. Bly said, I am suffering from all of that. My skin is just really, really bad. Every time depression sits in a little bit, or you just start getting lazy, you don't eat right, you don't drink right. It only takes a couple of weeks before I notice how my wounds, how different they look, and how they're not moving forward anymore. They are now moving backwards. So I know that spinal injury, there's always that extra thing of your bowels, because that is something that every single one of us have to deal with. But the weight, I never thought about the future at all. When I was done, I thought, the first 20 years were just perfect. I was doing everything right. I was light. I used to preach to all my heavier friends, about getting in shape, and all the guys that were taking all those medications, how to get rid of them and just start taking normal foods a little bit, because everybody was on so many pills, and I always thought that was such a bad thing. But what I didn't look at was myself when I went through a lifestyle change, quit competing in sports. There goes my muscles. I'm not eating the way I used to eat for a sport, so there goes all the extra weight that was on me, like carbohydrating, overloading on carbohydrates and stuff, so that when you're out competing, your body can rely on that can reach in and grab all that energy. I wasn't putting that into my body anymore. I didn't think I needed it because I wasn't doing anything. Well, my wounds needed it as much as anything else. And so I'm just really happy to reconnect with Melissa here lately. We've come a long way. I had a good talk the other day on the phone, and I feel confident again that, even though I've been carrying this wound on my butt and my hips for the last year and a half, and some days I think that it's just not going to heal, or it's not going to go nowhere. The fact is I'm not doing enough to make it, to heal it, to do the right thing. So I'm just happy to have the information. I'm happy to be here for this presentation. And I hope that, just don't do what I do. Do what they've been talking about. It's so important. The protein, just the calories, the fluids, everything that Melissa's talked about. It's the exercise. I used to exercise every day. Now I don't exercise nothing. The most exercise that I do is get in my vehicle to come here today and go home. I'll lay back down and I won't do nothing all day long. Well, I'm thinking that's helping me heal, but it's not doing anything to help whatsoever. So, you know, the nutrition, the fluids, the exercise, it's all 100% everything that you need to do to get healed. And if you're a disability, I always thought that only spinal injury people were the ones dealing with pressure sore wounds and whatnot. I never knew that it was a problem for everybody else as well. But you got to get on the program. You need to listen, and you just need to put something together and follow it, and then adjust it and change it as you need to go. But I guarantee you'll see the results, because I have, when I do as I'm told. So from now on, I do as I'm told.
We heard you. We heard you. We're gonna hold you to it.
I'm all ears, Melissa. Whatever you say from now on, it's golden word.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm good.
Okay, thanks so much, Darren. So with that, we'll kind of be able to open things up for some relevant discussion and questions pertaining to today's topic. If you have questions specifically for Darren or for Melissa or Dr. Bly, feel free to put them in the chat box or to speak out. Terry will help kind of guide this process just to make sure it goes smoothly. And I'll just kind of put it out there because just in probably 10 minutes or so, there will be a couple poll questions that'll pop up on your screen that we'd like you to complete. So wherever we are in that discussion question and answer, just if you see those questions pop up, it's just so that we can catch you before some of you have to log off, if that's the case. So yeah, Terry, is there anything you want to share as far as what has popped up in the chat box?
Yeah, I'll just start off with the first question. So we have a question at the start for Dr. Bly. Would silver hydrosol or colloidal silver, I didn't screw that up, work as a disinfection or a disinfectant?
So silver is antibacterial, and it's ionized silver that has the most antibacterial effect. Colloidal silver by definition is not ionized, so it is not a very powerful disinfectant. Silver hydrosol, I don't know much about. It does have ionized silver, but it appears to be designed more as a nutritional supplement. So I don't know that it's been looked at as a topical product. The problem with silver products is the concentration of the silver can be hugely variable depending on who made it and how it was made. And so and the more silver it has in it, obviously, the more expensive it is. So generally, I would avoid using silver as an antibacterial or a disinfectant. We do have silver dressings that we use at the wound clinic, but those have been specifically designed to ionize and to provide an antimicrobial effect. So.
Perfect, thank you. Do you have a question from, oh, I thought there was another question. Unless it got deleted, or maybe it got deleted. Beto asks, what are the most common side effects of taking protein powder? Can this cause loose stools, etc.?
Protein powder. Yes, thanks. Protein powder can come in a variety of different forms. So for people that have lactose intolerance, they may have a intolerance to protein powder. However, if you do it in small amounts, like whey protein powder or soy protein powder, if you do it in small amounts throughout the day and see how your body reacts, then you should be able to tolerate it. But if you add a big amount, like a big scoop at one time, and your body's not used to it, then you might have a high output. So my recommendation is to trial and error and just do it small amounts throughout the day. So typically for people that have ongoing bowel issues, some people would just stay away from the protein powders. But literally, if you do have lactose intolerance, I would highly recommend or bowel issues as well, just try a small amounts and then graze it throughout the day and add it into little things like fluids. Protein powder actually mixes in really good into hot things. So a lot of times people, if they add in protein powder into juice, it clumps up because of the acid. So if you are keen on trying protein powder with a wound present, I would highly recommend just grazing it throughout the day. And then with regards to vegan and vegetarian powders, those tend to actually, for some people that have bowel issues, they tend to have a love-hate relationship with vegan and vegetarian protein powders. So it's the same thing. You need to try it. Just try and buy a small container first and see whether or not your body reacts well to it. But ideally, though, is small amounts throughout the day for protein powder. You don't want to dump too much protein powder plus eating a large meal at one time, because then you might have bowel issues as well. Hopefully that answers your question.
Perfect. Before Beta, I'll go back to your question for Darren. Now that Melissa's talking, I'll just do this other one. Jason asked, in trying to find a dietitian, what would people look for in terms of professional title or credentials? There are many nutrition and dietary consultation services available, and it can be difficult to know the difference.
Great question. So in Alberta, if you find somebody who's written an article online and it says RD behind their name, that means they're a registered dietitian. So if there's people that don't have any acronyms behind their name, that tends to mean that if they don't have a dietitian behind their name, that means that the information might not be comprehensive and best practice for people that then compared to like nutrition specialists or the area of nutrition writer. So when you are looking at the articles online or either trying to find someone that has qualified information, the College of Dietitians of Alberta has a list of dietitians for the area of whichever province you're living in. Plus, on Alberta Health Services website, there is counseling services that you can actually find a dietitian with that's qualified to actually address your nutrition concerns as well.
Perfect. And again, if you guys have questions, if your screens are blacked out, you can put your little hand symbol up or something like that, and I'll watch for you. So going back to Beto, Beto's had a question for Darren. He was just curious about why you were unable to follow the nutrition advice completely. Like, is it due to problems with the body or access to food, or mostly like you're talking about your bowel issues?
Right. Well, when you become a spinal injury, and it's different many levels of spinal injury, whether you're a quad or para, you can take 10, 12, you can take 10 paraplegics whose break is exactly the same. And every one of them's bodies react a little different and have a little bit different function. But most of the spinal injury people are more complete than they are incomplete. So what happens is you lose your ability to control your body, your bladder and your bowels, or something that is the control that is taken away from you. So for the reason why it's just I've been in a wheelchair for 36 years, and for the first 30 years, I never took in milk or vitamin C because both those things will completely flush me out. So my body has definitely suffered from that. But the reason I can't take that stuff, it's not because I can't get to it, body won't, or not that I'm not even interested in putting it in my system. It's just that it won't stay there. It'll flush me out and I'll have bowel problems. So most spinal injury people have a routine where they go to the bathroom every morning, every second morning, every third morning, and they do different systems to clean themselves out. So a lot of those things, if I put them in my system, like if I were to take a drink of milk right now, within 2 hours, I would be on the bathroom having an accident, have to go shower, get cleaned up, change my bandages, all that kind of stuff. And it's not the way I choose to live. So I've been very careful about all that kind of stuff. Melissa was just talking about the milk and the protein. I used to do that and it worked very well. But what I would do was, since I do my bowel routine every 3 days now, it was every 2 days, but I switched it to every 3 days. So the night before I do my routine, I would do a glass of milk with the protein mix and see what happens, because you're going to clean yourself out the next day. So whatever that's going to be in there that's causing problems within your bowels, hopefully you get to flush that out when you go, when you sit on a can or whatever, how to say it, when you go to the washroom. So that's how I used to try and intake some of those things. I wasn't sure about something, I would always just do it the night before I was gonna clean myself out the next morning. I would never do it 2 days earlier, because then I got 2 days I have to worry about whether I'm gonna have an accident or whatnot. So that's how I'm able to try a bunch of stuff, including the protein mix in the milk. I'll get back to that. I haven't done that for a long time, so I'm gonna get back on that, but I won't do it every day. It'll definitely just be one night before my bowel routine morning, so that I know that it'll stay in until the next day anyways.
Thank you. Before we get to Gee's question, just quickly, we'll do our poll questions. And once we do the poll questions, I'll just remind you here they're up on the screen. We'll do that first. So just quickly, so next week we always do a follow-up post-webinar chat, and I think Dr. Bly hopefully will be on the call as well, possibly. But we just kind of continue the conversation. So if you're not able to get your questions answered today, or you just want to share your story about your experience with pressure injuries, we'll keep talking as well. Also, for today, you can ask questions, but you can also share your pressure injuries or your experience with dealing with them on this call, just for you guys to know. So go to you, Guy. I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, this is a question for Dr. Bly. Just had a pressure injury, more from an abscess, and I was able to use the wound vac. And I'm fortunate enough to be injured and have coverage through WCB. I'm just wondering, what is the prevalence of using the wound vac and coverage through Alberta Health Services?
So we actually, the wound clinic and home care own about 7 wound vacs. And the use of those, if going through home care or the wound clinic, is covered by Alberta Health. The limitation there is we just don't have very many of them. And they're old, so they're prone to breaking down, and occasionally we have to take one into the shop. They're expensive, and so I can't see us getting too many more in the future. We use the ones we have, and it is covered. It's just we try and select those who are going to respond the best to it. Sometimes post-surgically, some of the surgical services have some wound vacs more for post-surgical wounds that they will put on temporarily. And then we have access to 6 or 7 of them through home care and the wound clinic, more for chronic type wounds.
Sorry.
Currently, there's a Alberta strategy for spinal cord injury. And I think, pressure, ulcers, treatment of wounds, the cost associated with people going in for skin flap surgeries, etc., is exorbitant. Wouldn't it be worthwhile if wound clinics such as yours, Spinal Cord Injury Alberta, we all team together to say we need better treatment and prevention of injuries, and take a look at what other provinces, countries are doing for this?
Yeah, for sure. Prevention, obviously, it delivers the most cost savings. For example, there's a provincial provincial working group on pressure injuries that I've been a part of, and a lot of those efforts are coming from there. It sort of becomes a balance of how much it costs versus how much benefit we think we can get, because it'd be great to have unlimited funds and do whatever we wanted, but the truth is we have limited funds. And so my understanding is there are efforts to help with prevention and treatment that are covered. Like the wound clinic is covered by Alberta Health. So there's no cost associated with going to the wound clinic other than getting yourself there, I guess. And so there are a lot of efforts underway to help with pressure injuries and spinal cord injury treatment. We're just trying to balance the budget with the potential benefits.
Right, thank you. And I guess I'll just, on behalf of Spinal Cord Injury Alberta, I'll put out that I would be willing to help out on any national or provincial protocols and see this through, because it's a definite interest.
Good to know.
Awesome. Thank you, Guy. Or Guy, sorry. Just, I know this was more about how we should do a future webinar on it, but Teresa, maybe Dr. Bly, just quickly, do you have any, or even Darren, some tips and tricks to keep the pressure relief off during the day while you're dealing with a pressure injury? You know, like you said, you still need to exercise, but you obviously can't be sitting in your chair all day exercising or moving around, transferring, you know. So whether there's some equipment or padding other than bandage, I think you already talked about, that could help with pressure relief while through the day. Well, we'll go Dr. Bly first.
Sure. So obviously your body's not going to tell you when you're developing an area of pressure. So one of the things to do is to be consciously aware of what position you're in and whether you are putting pressure over the same area of your body. And you may have to actually remind yourself to change positions, whether that's setting an alarm or whatnot. The other thing to do is look at where you're spending most of your time. If you're spending a lot of time in your wheelchair, you need to make sure that you've got a good supportive cushion, like a Roho cushion or something like that, and make sure it's working properly. There's a seating clinic that can help with that. There are occupational therapists. The other thing is sleeping arrangements, right? So you want to make sure you're not laying on one spot for hours on end. There are solutions to that. There's no easy answer. You need to find out what works for you and what your biggest barriers seem to be, and look for specific solutions to that. But often, most people don't have to think about that, right? If they sit in one place for too long, it's like, oh, my left butt cheek hurts. I need to move and scoot around. But if you can't feel that, you need to consciously remind yourself to watch for that, to move around, to change position, that sort of thing. Darren, do you have any tips?
Yeah, no, I mean, well, I mean, I was very active, even though I wasn't very fat and I was all muscular. I think bouncing out of my chair, I'm always moving, I'm always laying on the floor, playing with the kids, the dogs, the animals, whatever. I never sat in one spot. But then after I started getting injured and suffering my injuries, that's when I found myself sitting still. And then that's how all this came about. Is definitely from lack of exercise and lack of movement. You can't be sitting in one spot. That's just, you need pressure relief. And I never used to, never used to do pressure relief, but it's definitely now that I can't bend and I can't do all the things I used to do. So pressure relief is now something I'm doing on a regular basis all day long, because it's the only way to give the relief to my butt when I'm sitting in my wheelchair. There's just no other way to deal with it. And otherwise you want to lay down all day and then you lose all your muscle and you start having more problems like I've had. So laying around isn't the answer either.
I know
Okay, go Dr. Bly.
Sorry, I know there've been efforts to find technology that will take the place. Like for example, there's a company out of Calgary that built an insole for your shoes, more for diabetics, same principle. It's a pressure sensor. If any one area develops too much pressure, then it sends an alert to your smartphone. I imagine there are things like that that are being worked on for anyone with potential pressure injuries. The problem right now is I don't think that's accessible to everybody, but those are things to watch out for.
Yeah, there's definitely examples out there from seating wise for sure. Roho, having to select and, you know, so you can take pressure up one quadrant, or there's seating maps that you can sit on daily, and it kind of keeps, so you can keep track of your pressure through the day, or keep track of the air in your roho, for example, one example. But that'd be going with, like Janae said in the messages, to, you know, keep in touch with your OT, you know, the seating clinics, and kind of keep reassessing. You're not going to stay the same through the years. Like Darren says, I'm a skinny 6'1" dude too, so I'm going to probably have these issues as well. I have bony butt, and so, you know, I'll have to keep track and change my ways in my future. Before I go to Rob, who had a question, I just quickly saw Brandis, she sent this a little bit ago. What would you recommend for individuals that are low income to get nutrients required? You know, affordable foods don't provide the required nutrients sometimes, like McDonald's, maybe not.
Very, very good question. There's been an increased prevalence, as we're all aware. The food costs have gone up tremendously over the past 2 years, and I don't see it letting up. So with regards to healthy eating, there's always a misconception that healthy eating is more expensive. However, if you are experiencing any issues with regards to getting access to food, there is social workers that actually can help with the dietitians to get funding for people that are on AISH. So if you are on AISH, you actually would be eligible for additional funding for a high protein or high calorie diet. It's for people that are only approved for AISH. Now, with regards to just overall foods and budgeting, there is a lot of foods, like for example, beans, peas, and lentils and canned beans are very affordable, and also eggs are a good source of protein. Some people, what they do to maximize their energy needs throughout the day is they would have pasta and rice, which are actually a very high source of energy, but then they would complement it with beans, peas, or beans or lentils for the protein choice as well. So that's a really affordable way. Another thing I'm just going to recommend is like coupons. There is coupons you could find online, which are available through like applications for the grocery store area that you're in. So that's another area to save money or get cheaper deals. Another thing would be just to not let your food go to waste, which is quite common for the patient's population that I see. So when you're buying things, you know, we tend to binge buy and buy a whole bunch, and then it goes to waste and we don't use it. So just think of ways that actually like you would use things. So for example, like I use the idea for rotisserie chicken, but like Darren shared with me, he's like, I just buy my chicken and put it in the oven. It's cheaper that way, which is a great idea. And then you have protein. You have meals or a protein source for the next 3 or 4 days. So another thing that people do is they do gardening throughout the year. So if you had a pot of soil, you could actually keep lettuce, or either you can grow carrots in your house throughout most of the year. So if you have a green thumb, though. So these are just all ideas. But the other thing would be if you are a low income in Alberta, I would highly recommend touching base, like you have difficulty affording food. It would be a good idea to touch base with the dietitian, because they actually can give you more specialized resources that would actually be meeting your protein needs, calorie needs, and addressing your bowel needs as well too.
Perfect. So this is actually a question just on behalf of, I do have some clients that fall into the lower income category. So would they have to get, like for anyone here for the knowledge, would you have to speak to a dietitian who would get a hold of the AISH worker, or how would that work?
So dietitians write letters and they actually assess the patient, seeing which diet they would actually be eligible for. So we don't do it for everybody. But if there is funding available, they would get extra funding every month. But how I highly recommend the process is just to do a referral to the dietitian through Alberta Health Services, through Alberta Healthy Living Program. And then they would actually write a letter to the AISH worker. And then the AISH worker would then say yes or no. And then the letter is done once a year. And so the funding would come out every month for the clients. Another thing that I just want to let you know is that there's new approval. giving you all the information. So a dietitian can actually get funding for Meals on Wheels. So that's another idea. Meals on Wheels can be funded through AISH. Now, that would be through a discussion with a dietitian. I have had clients whereby they've used the money from the diets funding and they used it for getting purchased meals. So whether it's heart to home meals or Meals on Wheels.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I'll jump to Robbie. Had his hand up for a little while.
Yeah, no worries. I wanted to thank Eric and Melissa for attending today and providing your guys' experience and professional experience with it, and Darren as well for sharing his lived experience story. My comment was more toward, or question or comment was more towards the side of equipment, appropriate equipment, right? And access to that if you're developing skin breakdown. And, to try to get into that seating clinic, the long delays, the waits that individuals have to go through to get assessed, right? So I don't know if it differs in the Lethbridge area versus, some of the areas up further north or those more rural areas. But I have numerous clients that the biggest barrier is getting that appointment, even when they, talk to the OT or whatever, to be seen in an actual seating clinic, quote unquote, to be assessed for, whether it's required for a new cushion or get that pressure mapping done, those sort of things. Now, like with your experience at your clinic, have you also run into those issues as well? And if so, how is there a way to kind of fast track that process if they got a nasty wound going on, or is it still hurry up and wait? Whoever, like
It's a limited resource, and I know lots of people have frustrations with it taking time to get into the seating clinic, or you get a leak in your ROHO cushion. It can take quite some time actually to get it replaced. I don't really have any tips. I don't know that they fast track things based on wounds. It's not like the emergency room where if you're having a heart attack, you get bumped to the front of the line. At least as far as I'm aware, I share your frustration. I don't know what else to do that would be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Our biggest problem right now in Alberta is we have very few OTs, and so they're swamped. And so seating clinics require an OT, and we just don't have a lot of them. If you're hospitalized, often you have quicker access to occupational therapy, but I wouldn't recommend that route if you can avoid it.
I agree. And I'm only asking because being from a different province and having my injury in a different province, I see the different models, I guess, of care in terms of having to go see a specialized clinic versus, being in another province where I was injured, that there was no special seating clinic that you had to go to. It was see your occupational therapist. You can go to your local hospital, see that occupational therapist, no matter which little rural town you were in, and be able to be assessed there, right? Like within a week or two, versus having to go to a specialized clinic.
I think the specialized clinics are there to try and deal with the shortage of occupational therapists.
Okay.
If we had more occupational therapists and you could just pop in and see one and get assessed, it would be definitely less an issue. But we're really short on occupational therapists in Alberta and Lethbridge as well.
Gotcha. Cool. Sinead, do you have any comment on that, being an OT yourself? Just curious.
Actually, I'm PT, but
Oh, sorry, my apologies.
no, it's totally fine. And it's hard too because of my role as facilitating today. I didn't want to jump in too much as far as outside of the presentation, but what Dr. Bly said is exactly right. I mean, they do prioritize, just like all of our allied health professionals do, with respect to, that urgent need for for assessment versus, something that's more chronic and maybe less urgent. But OT specifically, we've been struggling for, a handful of years plus on how to better manage that wait time, because it is just a high demand service. So
Mhm.
where what Dr. Bly talked about earlier, where the importance of wound prevention and that education is so important, where you recognize, these issues and these potential risk situations sooner, so that you can look at things like your seating system and your cushion, while you've got some time, versus trying to do that after you've got a full-fledged open wound, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, we're definitely aware of the demand.
Cool. Thanks. Thank you guys for sharing.
Just give anybody have a comment or one last question before we sign off? All right, well, I'd like to thank everybody who joined us on this call. I think that was a really well done and informative webinar. Thank you so much for our special guests for sharing, and Darren for making the time to jump in and get on your butt, come and talk to us, and then go home and get off your butt. But we appreciate it, and we really think people like you are able to make these webinars very special, and really show people the human element to our conversations with these webinars. I again just want to reiterate for next week. Again, I hope you can't hear that. My wife is blending the smoothie, so I guess I'm going to have a smoothie too for my protein.
Protein for you.
Yes, protein break for me. But again, next week on Monday from 12 to 1, I will be posting it on our Spinal Cord Injury Alberta social media platform, Facebook, Instagram, and on our website events page. I will also post the link for the Zoom in the video for this, which will be on YouTube later this week. We have a SCILS webinar playlist on our Spinal Cord Injury Alberta YouTube channel. So if you want to join our conversation next week, please jump on and share your stories. We'd love to hear other people's issues and things they're dealing with, and hopefully we can get some answers, or we can just get angry together and get through it. So again, thank you everybody for joining our call, and thank you for our guests. That was awesome.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
everyone.
Take care, everyone.